Given how strong our results are, I almost feel like we should just go home.
Palantir just crushed earnings. Let's go, Alex Karp.
But, we've been saying since we went public in a DPO that we would build infrastructure to make America and its allies the dominant force in the world. We claimed, to much skepticism, that this would be done in a software product, that defense and commercial industry would be driven by software, hardware, hybrid technologies, that there were very few companies in the world that could actually do that these companies are basically only built in America, that the companies that have tried to do this that aren't Palantir are built by ex-Palantirians, that the financials of Palantir would flow from our products and our culture and our way of implementing, that we would bring violence and death to our enemies.
Palantir's ambition to position America and its allies as a dominant force is a bold statement that reflects a clear vision for the future. This emphasis on building a powerful software infrastructure showcases the company's commitment to integrating advanced technology into both defense and commercial sectors. The skepticism around this approach highlights the challenge of shifting traditional mindsets in these industries, but it's a necessary evolution.
While making targeting and general issues of safety better for our allies and for Americans, that we would stand by our values in thick and thin, including that the West and America are superior ways of organizing and that this is a great country and historically anomalous in its greatness. And even we are shocked by the 44% growth in the U.S. off of a $2 billion base. So this is not some speculative small base, 44% growth. Even we are happy to see that we grew 30%, to see the real reacceleration in USG to 40%, and to see the very, very strong results in U.S. commercial. Also, allied countries that have begun to realize that AI is the way to make their defenses superior in the face of brutal, heinous, immoral, and often terroristic enemies, where you need a superior form of fighting that's both safer for you and more dangerous for the adversary and controls how you hit them and when and where and allows you to maximize your results. It is also just jarring to see how America adopts the most important, most agile, and most impactful technology independent of who the purveyor and builder of that. We are building this company, and we believe we're at the beginning, and watching American adoption both in government and commercial, while not forcing us to change, while accepting that many of the ideas of how to make your enterprise better, whether it's insurance, oil and gas, any kind of complicated manufacturing, supply chain, healthcare, obviously defense and intel, that a new and different way of building software and implementing it, meaning the infrastructure, is where the value is, despite the fact that, as you may have noticed, many have noticed, that the experts that write about these things seem to believe the commodity.
Karp's assertion that America embodies superior organizational values underscores a deep-seated belief in the country's exceptionalism. This perspective is crucial for rallying support, especially when navigating complex international relations. The emphasis on standing by these values thick and thin serves as a reminder of the moral foundations that guide Palantir's mission, reinforcing a commitment to protecting and advancing democratic ideals.
The LLM is the valuable aspect of this, and that the actual asset, meaning how you manage the commodity, is the actual value. Despite great skepticism about our view of how to do this, the market seems to have decided what works, works. No matter how theoretically appealing the idea is of building software around how you may have learned to build it in business school, is to you as the person not buying the software. The people buying the software who are allowing our market to grow at 30% in aggregate, 44% in America, 40% in U.S. government, and dramatically in U.S. comm, are speaking with their feet and their implementations, and we're very, very proud of that. I'm particularly proud to see the warfighter adoption of this. You see every part of U.S. government, including the White House, Congress, defense, intel, beginning to embrace the application of large language models in infrastructure, obviously something that Palantir is particularly specialized in. And we are really, I think, as a company, enjoying this phase. You know, when you build a company over a long period of time, there are good and bad phases, but to see our view of what it makes to make enterprises stronger and better show up in these dramatic results is super gratifying, and we plan to continue.
By emphasizing the management of commodities through advanced models, he articulates a vision where the integration of sophisticated AI not only enhances operational capabilities, but also serves as a key differentiator in competitive markets. This perspective is vital in positioning Palantir as a leader in leveraging AI for tangible business outcomes.
Thanks, Alex. We'll now turn to a few questions from our shareholders before opening up the call. We received a few questions on AI. How will Palantir differentiate its AI offerings from others, including the model creators? And how is AIP different, and how will Palantir maintain its competitive edge?
Well, Alex talked about how the models, the LLMs, are commoditized. But if you look at the models, you see that they're getting better, which is awesome. But they're also getting more similar across both closed and open source models. While they're improving, they're converging upon each other, all while the price of inference is dropping precipitously. And that's, so if you even look at these model companies, they have to build applications around these models to extract value. That's where we have a decade-long head start. We've been building the forge to create and implement AI applications at scale throughout the enterprise. And that differentiation starts with the ontology. Using the ontology to drive AIP across these applications. When you look at the legacy software companies, I'm not sure they understand it yet, but when you look at the innovative Silicon Valley companies, they recognize the wall of tech investments this implies that's in front of them that's going to act like a great filter.
I would say, well, first of all, I think people are beginning to recognize we were right, and these numbers show it. So that creates a dynamic of, okay, well, if you can actually extract value from large language models in any context, then clearly the company that does it is very valuable. And a lot of our customers, even a year ago, they were kind of skeptical of, can you make these things useful? I would say most of the customers I deal with are pretty skeptical. You can make large language models do anything but do a science experiment. And in a weird way, even though the models are improving, they're meeting up against greater skepticism among clients because clients have tried them and it's just a high school experiment. And then if you get to, so it's like the market and analysts seem to have put a lot of credibility into the models, and we do too. We think they're very valuable when managed correctly, when used in a way that an enterprise can understand. One of the problems that people have is if you're not involved in enterprise software, it's very hard to understand how an enterprise actually works. You cannot take a large language model that gives you an ELO score of 1,200 and use it on targeting on the battlefield. There's a security model. There's a way in which the data is understood. There's certain things you can't share. There's places you would use certain models but not others. How do you bring that back to your corpus of truth to understand in a lethal context who dies and who doesn't? And you have very similar use cases in underwriting and in healthcare. Understanding the actual way technically enterprise is driven as embodied by Foundry, as embodied by our abstraction layer on top of Foundry, which includes all those nuances, which we call an ontology, as powered by AIP, are all sorts of things that our clients are beginning to discover every day. Of course, the main way they're discovering it is, holy shit, I can do this in an hour that used to take 5 hours or 50 hours, or I could have 2,000 people or 20 and 10. And by the way, on the targeting on the battlefield, we've talked about basically 2 orders of magnitude in reduction of people. There are whole global events now that would be very different without our ability to manage these things in our infrastructure. And that's obviously generating a lot of excitement internally that spills into our earnings.
Insights into Palantir's approach to AI highlight a fundamental understanding of the current landscape, where many AI models are becoming commoditized. By focusing on the differentiation that stems from their unique ontology and the ability to implement AI applications at scale, Karp emphasizes how Palantir's long-standing expertise positions it as a leader in the field. This perspective not only underscores the strategic advantage Palantir holds, but also reinforces the importance of contextualizing AI solutions within the specific operational frameworks of enterprises.
Thank you. Our next question is from Ryan, who asks, as Palantir continues to invest in new AI technologies and expand globally, how are you balancing these investments with maintaining or improving profitability and operating margins, especially given the current macroeconomic challenges?
We aren't just balancing, we're excelling. Revenue grew 30% year over year in Q3, 44% in the US in the quarter, and you couple that with our expanding margins in the quarter. We did 38% adjusted operating margin, our 8th consecutive quarter of expanding margins, and we posted 68 in the Rule of 40 score. At the same time, we had an outstanding adjusted free cash flow margin in the quarter, 60%. And so looking forward, we're raising guidance for adjusted free cash flow to in excess of $1 billion for full year 2024. We're raising adjusted operating income guidance to in excess of $1 billion, well over that actually, which represents a 39% margin in Q4. And we're doing all this while we're continuing to invest at the beginning of the AI revolution. There is an incredible amount of demand there, and we're investing in technical talent, and we're continuing to build out world-class product.
There's a Steelman version of this, which is, given how well you're doing, given you've really accelerated to 30%, given the U.S. is growing 44%, why don't you blow up your Rule of 68, which, by the way, to my knowledge, is the single best of comparable companies in the world and significantly better than many very strong companies. So an average, normal way of looking at Palantir would be like, oh, great, you have a 44% growth on a $2 billion base in the U.S., and you have a Rule of 68, get that 68 down to 50, and maybe you can grow. But in fact, that way of looking at a business misunderstands the way in which Palantir builds. We believe that by investing, and we know at this point, instead of trying to have 10,000 clients, all of whom hate you, it's kind of what people want, 10,000 clients that hate you, but they can't get rid of your product. We want a smaller number of the world's best partners that, quite frankly, are dominating with our product. And the way you do that is by not blowing up your margin and getting 10,000 salespeople. It's actually by going deeper on the product. And in fact, what we see is the deeper and better the product, the more we drive sales, the more we have our cultural singular advantage as Palantir, not as a commodity product. It's like, we are not a commodity. We do not want our customers to be commodities. We want them to be individual titans that are dominating their industry or the battlefield. And we reflect that in how we do things. We are not trying to be your average Harvard Business School preferred company that reduces the margins, has a thin product, and then has a lower Rule of 40. By the way, I don't think you'd get higher growth than what we have. Honestly, although we, of course, are always pushing and want even higher growth, the people who tend to ask these questions are modeling companies with 20% growth and lower margins. We have 44% growth in the most important market in the world, arguably not the only, but by far the most valuable market in the world, while having a Rule of 68, be the best in the world. And we're going to maintain the contradiction of having both high margins and high growth. It's not one or the other. They're actually interplayed, and they're not a contradiction. They power each other. That's how you know you have world-class products. That's what you see in your numbers.
Karp's response highlights Palantir's impressive financial growth amidst challenging macroeconomic conditions, emphasizing the company's ability to excel rather than merely balance investments. His focus on year-over-year revenue growth of 30% with an astounding 44% growth in the U.S. market reflects not only a robust demand for Palantir services, but also a strategic execution that prioritizes profitability while embracing expansion. This dual focus underscores the company's resilience and adeptness in navigating the complexities of the current economic landscape.
Thank you both. Our next question is from Dan with Wedbush.
A great quarter, and congrats to you and the team. So my question is, with boot camp conversions, has it even surprised you just how quickly, from a customer coming into a boot camp, potential customer, to conversion to mega deals, what you're seeing, and what do you think that says about your process and where we are in this AI revolution where Palantir sits?
Yeah, I think obviously the most indicative of what we're seeing and the impact is the 44% year-over-year growth in U.S. commercial, 54% in U.S. commercial, the sequential growth we're seeing. I think I gave examples of boot camps where we're seeing multiple different customers across different industries that are going from the initial boot camp to a seven-figure ACV deal within a matter of less than 2 months. We're seeing that in the conversations we have with customers in our push to go from prototype to production and the expansions we're seeing at customers. And I'm seeing that in the conversations. As we said, it's going to be the AI haves and the have-nots. The haves are moving quickly, making decisions quickly, and adopting quickly. And I'm feeling that in the conversations we have with them in the conversions we're seeing.
I would just say that the most surprising thing is just how there's a small number of increasingly large number of customers, meaning industry, that get this. And they are just moving really quickly. And anyone who's involved in the enterprise, so if you take company XYZ and then 5 people go to a different company, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and call us. And so it's just the way in which this just expands in the U.S. and in some other countries, but especially in the U.S. from anyone who touched this wants to use it in any part of anything they're doing. And it goes from one person, and then there's this transience in America where people really are moving to different companies a lot, and they're talking to each other, and there's just a willingness to take business metrics and use those business metrics against technology. And if you look at even 10 years ago, there was no form of software that had this kind of adoption and this kind of readiness. And also, it was conversely just not possible to show this kind of results this quickly. And we tend to focus on the results on the outside. But AI and large language models also allow us to scale our product on the inside. So one of the unfair things about this revolution is if you have business acumen and you have a product that is good or stellar, in my humble opinion, you can make it even better internally and externally. And so that allows us to also scale many, many more people to many, many organizations with the same number of people, as long as they're the best in the world. I heard really good things about your product. I want it tomorrow. How quickly can you get here? What is the first use case you could do? And then the first thing that they always ask is, well, show me some of the things that you've done in other places. I was at an important government entity a couple weeks ago, and they obviously Maven would be very useful for them. But then they start asking, well, what are you doing for hospitals? Could you use this on FOIA requirements? Could you use the same thing for managing our people? How could you make sure that our people are safe and happy? How do you move parts? How do we do procurement? A lot of the things Shyam's, so there's like a massive cost fertilization, even between verticals that otherwise would never talk. In the past, government use cases non-government use cases were just not things we were doing in government. And certainly from industry to industry, we did not have this, from real estate to supply chain to large hospital things. The use cases that they're doing inside our product, they are technically basically the same for us.
Karp's reflections on the rapid conversion from bootcamp participants to significant deals highlight Palantir's agility in capitalizing on the current AI revolution. The impressive figures, 44% year-over-year growth in U.S. commercial and 54% sequential growth, underscore the company's effective approach to converting interest into substantial revenue. This rapid conversion speaks to a streamlined process that efficiently translates customer engagement into tangible results, indicating that Palantir is not only adapting to market demands, but thriving within them.